Hi, welcome here. It's Jessica Mahoney. Today we'll be reading Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Lord of the Rings Part 1.
So, I was literally trying to remember where I had left off earlier, as usual. But yeah, I finally found the rhythm of it all, and let's just get into it. And I hope you enjoy this. And I hope it helps you fall asleep.
And brandy bucks were various grubs.
Always so slow in the beginning, but
Dragons.
momentum builds up. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and brandy bucks. There were various grubs, relations of Bilbo Baggins' grandmother, and various chubs, connection of his Took grandfather, and a selection of Booroses, Bulgers, Brace Giddles, Brock Houses, Good Bodies, Hornblowers, and Proud Foots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had hardly ever distantly connected with Bilbo, and some had hardly ever been the Hobbiton before. As they lived in remote corners of the Shire, the Sackville Baggins were not forgotten. Otto and his wife, Lobela, were present. They disliked Bilbo and deserted Frodo, but so magnificent was the invitation card, written in golden ink, that they had felt it impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin, Bilbo, had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation. All the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, though they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech, and their host an inevitable item. He was liable to drag on bits of what he called poetry, and sometimes after a glass or two would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had very pleasant, fast, and in fact an engrossing entertainment, rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell almost to nothing throughout the district of the ensuing weeks. But as Bilbo's catering had depleted the stocks of most of the stores, cellars and warehouses for mills around, that did not matter much. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in tolerant moods, at that delightful stage what they called filling up the corners. They were sipping their favourite drinks and nibbling at their favourite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. "My dear people," began Bilbo, raising his place. "Hear, hear, hear," they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus. Seeming reluctant to follow their own advice, Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under an illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell in his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air, the other was in his trouser pocket. "My dear Baggins and Boffins," he began again, "and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks and Crubs and Chubs and Broses and Bitches are welcome, and Booroses and Hornblowers and Bulgers, Brace Giddles, Good Bodies, block houses and proud foots. Proud feet, shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the
More glitches.
pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. Proudfoots, repeated Bilbo. Also, my good Sackville Bagginses, that I would back at last to the back end. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 11-1 today. Hooray, hooray, many happy returns, they shouted, and they hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. I hope you are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am. Defending cheers, cries of yes and no, noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were, as had been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed that they were marvelous crackers and contained instruments small but perfect, make and enchanting tones. Indeed, the one corner some of the young tooks and brandybucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had mainly said all that was necessary, now got up an impromptu orchestra and began merry dance tune. Master Everard. Master Everard took and Miss Millilot. Master Everard took. Oh my God. Master Everard took and Miss Millilot Brandybuck got on a table, and with the spells in their hands began to dance the spring ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots. The noise subsided. I shall not keep you long, he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. I have called you all together for a purpose. Something in the way that he said this made an impression. There was almost silence, and one or two of the tooks pricked up their ears. And one or two of the ticks pricked up their ears. Indeed, for the three purposes. First of all, tell you that I am immensely fond of all of you, and that 11 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits. Tremendous outbursts of approval. I don't know half of you, half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment.
Secondly, to celebrate my birthday, cheers again, I shall say, our birthday, for it is, of course, also the birthday of my heirs and nephew Frodo. He comes of age into his inheritance today.
Okay. Some perfunctory Just like a
Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some loud shouts of Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo from the juniors. The sackful Bagginses scold.
really got myself in a fix here, trying to sound out the word, a very simple word, but hey, yeah.
Scholard, and wondered, scholard, and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. Together we score 144. Our numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total, one gross, if I may use the expression. No cheers, this was ridiculous. Many of the guests, and especially the sackful Bigginses,
More tongue ties. Just doesn't end.
were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. One gross indeed, vulgar expression. It is also, if you may be allowed to refer to the ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival and my arrival by barrel at Isgaroth on the Long Lake, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on the occasion. I was only 51 then, and birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid. However, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember and could only say, "Thank you very much." I now repeated more correctly, "Thank you very much for coming to my little party." Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? Why couldn't they stop talking?
I found this particularly funny.
Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? But Bilbo did not sing or recite. He paused for a moment. Thirdly and finally, he said, "I wish to make an announcement." He spoke that last word so loudly and suddenly that people sat up who still could. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you, this is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped there. Then there was a dead silence until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Biggins boffin took Brandybuck, Grub, Chub, Burrows, Bulger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Holeblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the joke was in very bad taste, and more food and drink needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. "He's mad. I always said so," was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks, with a few exceptions, like Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted at his disappearance and nothing more of the ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandybuck was not so sure. Neither age nor an enormous dinner had clouded his wits, and he said to his daughter-in-law, Esmeralda, There's something fishy in this, my dear. I believe that Mad Biggins is off again. Silly old fool. But why worry? He hasn't taken the victuals with him. He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine. He called loudly to Frodo to send wine and round. He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine round again. Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing for some time. He had sat silent beside Bilbo's empty chair and ignored all remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests. But at the same time, he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking, discussing Bilbo Baggins' oddities, past and present, but the sackful Bigginses had already departed in wrath. Okay, so I think we are just going to call it a night or a day or whatever time you are watching, listening to this. And yeah, we're gonna continue. And that's basically the long and short of it. And good night, and I hope this helps you relax and sleep well. Okay, see you soon.